My brother got everything: the house, the cars, the bank accounts, the investments, while I got a rusted-out truck that barely ran. And sitting in that lawyer's office watching Trevor's smug face, I wanted to punch through the mahogany desk and demand to know what the hell Dad had been thinking in those final days before his heart gave out. The office smelled like old money and leather-bound law books nobody had opened since 1985. Attorney James Sullivan sat behind his fortress of a desk, reading glasses perched on his nose, droning through the last will and testament of Jack Brennan. My father, the man who'd raised me with his own 2 hands, taught me everything about carpentry and metalwork, and how to fix anything broken, only to apparently decide in the end that I wasn't worth more than scrap metal. To my son Trevor, Sullivan read, in that flat, affectless voice lawyers must learn in school, I bequeath my primary residence located at 428 Oakmont Drive, complete with all furnishings, fixtures, and contents therein. Additionally, I leave to Trevor my entire investment portfolio currently managed by Fairfield Investments, with an estimated value of $2.3 million as of the date of this will. Also to Trevor, I leave my checking and savings accounts at First National Bank, totaling approximately $180,000. Furthermore, my vehicle collection, specifically including my 1967 Ford Mustang, my 2018 Mercedes-Benz E-Class, and my 2015 Audi A6. Also to Trevor, my Rolex Submariner watch, my coin collection housed in the study safe, and all other personal effects not specifically designated herein. Trevor couldn't hide his smile. Didn't even try. He leaned back in the leather chair like he owned the place already, like he'd won some competition I hadn't known we were having. Maybe he had. Maybe the competition was, who can disappoint their father less? And somehow Trevor, 42 years old, never held a job for more than 6 months, currently between career opportunities, which was code for unemployed and living off Dad's generosity, had won. I sat there in my work clothes, the ones I'd thrown on at 5 a.m. before driving 3 hours to get here. Jeans with sawdust still on them from yesterday's job. Flannel shirt I'd owned for 10 years. Work boots that had seen better days. I'd taken unpaid time off from the construction site where I worked as a carpenter, losing a day's wages I couldn't afford to lose, just to be here for this. And to my son Maurice, Sullivan continued, and I could feel Trevor's eyes on me, watching for my reaction, feeding off my disappointment like some kind of emotional vampire. I leave my 1987 Ford F-150 pickup truck, currently located in Bay 3 of my garage at 428 Oakmont Drive. Silence. That was it. That was the entire inheritance. A truck so old it qualified for antique plates, one I'd seen sitting in Dad's garage my whole life collecting dust and rust, a vehicle that probably hadn't been started in a decade. Trevor actually laughed, not a chuckle, not a quiet snort. A full-throated laugh that echoed off the wood-paneled walls of Sullivan's office. A truck? That piece of shit? Dad must have really hated you, little brother. Something hot and sharp twisted in my chest, but I kept my voice level. Mr. Sullivan, is that the complete distribution of the estate? Sullivan looked uncomfortable, like he'd rather be anywhere else. He shuffled papers that didn't need shuffling. Yes, Mr. Brennan. That's the entirety of your bequest. I'm sorry if you were expecting something more substantial. More substantial. Like that was the problem. Like I'd been sitting here hoping for money. I hadn't been. I'd been hoping for some sign that Dad had cared, that all those years we'd spent working together had meant something, that I'd mattered. But apparently, I'd been wrong. The truck's worth maybe $500 for scrap, Trevor said, examining his fingernails like he was bored by the whole proceeding. But hey, at least you got something. Should we call a tow truck to haul it to the junkyard, or can you actually get it running? I stood up. The chair legs scraped against the hardwood floor loud enough to make Sullivan wince. When can I collect the vehicle? Immediately, if you wish. Sullivan pulled a key ring from an envelope on his desk. Old brass keys, worn smooth from years of use, attached to a simple metal ring. Nothing fancy, Nothing like the electronic key fobs Trevor would get for the Mercedes and the Audi. The truck is accessible now. I'll provide Trevor with the documentation necessary to transfer the house title. I took the keys. They were heavier than they should have been, or maybe that was just my imagination, the weight of disappointment making everything feel heavier. I'll get it out of the garage today. Don't rush on my account, Trevor said, standing and stretching like a cat. Actually, scratch that. Do rush. I want to start clearing out the garage this weekend. Figure out what else Dad left me that wasn't specifically itemized. Probably more good stuff in there. I looked at my brother. Really looked at him. We'd come from the same parents, grown up in the same house, but somewhere along the way, we'd become different species. Trevor was soft around the middle, his expensive haircut and manicured nails and designer clothes paid for with money he hadn't earned. I was all hard edges and calluses and muscles built from actual work, from swinging hammers and hauling lumber and earning every dollar I made. You know what, Trevor? I said quietly. Enjoy it. Enjoy all of it. The house we spent 2 summers renovating together, Dad and me. The money Dad made building things with his hands while you were off finding yourself at expensive universities on his dime. Enjoy spending his life's work while I go drive away in a truck older than both of us. Oh, I will, Trevor said. Thanks for the permission, though I don't really need it. I walked out of that office without another word. Didn't shake Sullivan's hand. Didn't say goodbye to Trevor. Just walked out into the cold March morning, my breath fogging in the air, and tried to figure out what the hell I was supposed to feel. The drive to Dad's house took 20 minutes through a city I'd grown up in but barely recognized anymore. Everything had changed, gotten bigger and shinier and more expensive, like the whole world had moved on without me. Dad's neighborhood was one of the nice ones, the kind where the lawns were professionally maintained and the cars in the driveways cost more than I made in a year. Trevor's BMW was already there when I pulled up in my 10-year-old Honda Civic. Of course, he'd driven straight over, probably wanted to start his inventory, start planning how to liquidate Dad's life into cash as quickly as possible. The house looked the same as it always had, 2-story colonial, white with black shutters, the deck Dad and I had built stretching across the back. I'd been 16 when we started that project, and Dad had taught me every step, how to set the posts, how to lay the decking, how to build the railing so it would last 50 years. We'd worked every weekend that summer, and then the next summer too, until it was perfect. Now it belonged to Trevor. The garage door was open, which meant Trevor was inside. I could hear him moving around, probably already going through boxes. I parked on the street and walked up the driveway, each step feeling like I was walking towards something I couldn't name. Trevor was in the garage, standing in front of Bay 3, the tarp already pulled off the truck. There it is, he said when he saw me. Your inheritance. I'd say you got screwed, but honestly, knowing you probably prefer this rusty piece of crap to money anyway. I ignored him and looked at the truck. Ford F-150, 1987, faded blue paint with rust eating through the wheel wells and lower door panels. The bed had dents and scratches from decades of use. The chrome bumper was pitted. The headlights were yellowed. It looked exactly like what it was, a truck that should have been scrapped years ago. Except something was off. Something didn't match. I walked closer, my carpenter's eye catching details Trevor would never notice. The tires weren't original. They were new, good quality all-terrains, despite the layer of dust covering them. The windshield had a crack running across it, but the glass itself was too clear, too perfect, and when I looked at the bottom edge, I could see a replacement sticker dated 2 years ago. You admiring your prize? Trevor asked. Take your time. I'm going to go through Dad's study, see what else he left me. You do that. Trevor walked back into the house, and I was alone with the truck. I walked around it slowly, looking more carefully now. The body was rough, but the frame underneath looked solid, recently treated for rust. The exhaust pipe was new. The suspension looked replaced. Someone had been maintaining this truck. Recently, regularly. I opened the driver's door, expecting cracked vinyl seats and springs poking through and that smell old vehicles get, like decay and mildew and time. Instead, I found leather seats in perfect condition, soft and supple like they'd been reupholstered within the last year. The dashboard looked original but was immaculate, not a crack or fade anywhere. The steering wheel had been rewrapped in leather. "What the hell, Dad?" I muttered. I slid into the driver's seat. It adjusted smoothly, the mechanism new or recently rebuilt. The interior smelled like leather conditioner and... was that new car smell? In a 35-year-old truck? The key slid into the ignition. I turned it, not expecting much. Maybe a clicking sound or the grinding of a starter that had seized up years ago. Instead, the engine roared to life immediately, settling into a smooth, powerful idle that spoke of a recent rebuild. This wasn't the original engine, or if it was, someone had taken it apart and put it back together with new everything. I sat there listening to that engine purr, and something Dad used to say came back to me. Nothing is ever what it seems at first glance. You've got to look deeper. Got to see what's underneath the surface. The dashboard was original looking, but everything worked. The lights, the turn signals, the heater that blew warm immediately. And mounted in the center, looking completely out of place in this old truck, was a modern GPS unit. Touchscreen, full color, the kind that cost $200 or $300. I touched the screen and it lit up, showing a map of the local area. But there was something already programmed into it. A saved destination, marked with a star, labeled simply, "For Maurice." My heart started beating faster. I tapped on the destination, the coordinates populated on the screen, along with a route. The location was north, deep in the mountains, about 200 miles away. The map showed it as being in the middle of nowhere, no roads nearby, no towns, nothing but wilderness. I pulled out my phone and tried to look up the coordinates on Google Maps, but my phone had no signal in the garage. I'd have to get outside, get somewhere with service, figure out what this location was. Or I could just drive there. The gas gauge showed 3/4 of a tank. I looked around the interior more carefully now. Everything had been recently cleaned. In the glove box, I found the truck's registration, current, paid through next year, and insurance documents showing comprehensive coverage. The truck was legal to drive, fully insured, ready to go. Dad had prepared this, recently. He'd rebuilt this truck, maintained it, insured it, programmed a GPS with coordinates specifically for me. This wasn't an insult. This wasn't him forgetting about me or valuing me less than Trevor. This was something else. Something planned. Something I needed to figure out. I backed the truck out of the garage slowly, the engine responding smoothly to every touch of the gas pedal. Trevor appeared at the garage door, holding a box of something he'd already claimed from Dad's house. "You actually got it started?" he called. "Color me surprised. Where are you going?" "Not sure yet," I said truthfully. "Well, good riddance. Oh, and Maurice? Don't come back expecting any handouts. Dad left you what he left you. That's it. We're done here." I looked at my brother, at the box of our father's possessions in his hands, at the house he'd inherited behind him, and I felt something click into place. Dad hadn't made a mistake. Dad never made mistakes, not when it came to the important things. He'd taught me that too. "We'll see," I said, and drove away. I parked 3 blocks away on a side street, hands shaking on the steering wheel, staring at that GPS like it held the answers to questions I didn't know how to ask. The truck idled smoothly beneath me, that rebuilt engine purring like it had secrets to tell, and I sat there trying to decide if I was crazy for even considering driving 200 miles into the mountains based on coordinates my dead father had left in a GPS. My phone had signal now. I pulled it out and called Karen, my wife. She answered on the second ring, and I could hear our 6-year-old daughter Emma in the background, laughing at something on TV. Hey, Karen said. How'd it go? About as bad as expected. Trevor got everything. The house, the money, the cars, all of it. Oh, Maurice. Her voice softened in that way it did when she knew I was hurting but didn't want to show it. I'm so sorry, baby. What did you get? Dad's old truck, the '87 Ford that's been sitting in his garage forever. Silence for a moment. Then, carefully. That's it? Just the truck? Yeah, that's it. Trevor's already acting like he won the lottery, which I guess he did. Are you okay? Was I? I didn't know. The disappointment was there, sure, a hard knot in my chest that made breathing difficult. But underneath that was something else, something that had started the moment I'd turned that key and heard the engine roar to life. Curiosity, suspicion, the feeling that there was more to this story than what I'd seen in Sullivan's office. I don't know, I said honestly. But Karen, there's something weird about this truck. It's been restored. Recently. New tires, new interior, rebuilt engine, and there's a GPS with coordinates programmed into it, a location Dad specifically saved for me. What kind of location? That's what I need to find out. The coordinates point to somewhere in the mountains, about 200 miles north, middle of nowhere. Maurice, what are you thinking? I'm thinking I need to drive there, see what Dad left me. Because this isn't just an old truck, Karen. This is something Dad planned. Something he wanted me to find. She was quiet for a long moment. I could hear Emma asking for a snack in the background, Karen's muffled voice telling her to wait a minute. Then Karen came back on the line. How long will you be gone? I don't know. Maybe overnight. The drive alone is 4 hours each way, and I have no idea what's waiting for me when I get there. We have that dinner with my parents tomorrow night. You promised. I know. I'll be back in time. I promise. And Emma's doctor appointment is Monday morning, the one we've been waiting 6 weeks for. I'll be back by then, too. Karen, I have to do this. I can't explain it, but I have to see what's there. Another long silence, then, be careful. And call me when you get there, wherever there is. I will. I love you. Love you too. I hung up and sat there for another minute, looking at the coordinates on the GPS. The route it calculated took me up through familiar territory for the first 100 miles, the highway I'd driven countless times, heading north toward the mountains where Dad used to take me camping when I was a kid. But then, the route diverged, taking back roads and county highways and eventually what looked like logging roads into territory I'd never explored. I stopped at a gas station and filled the tank, even though it was 3/4 full. Better to be safe. I went inside and bought supplies, bottles of water, energy bars, beef jerky, a cheap flashlight because I didn't know what I'd find at those coordinates, and I wanted to be prepared. The clerk was an old guy, maybe 70, with hands that looked like they'd done real work once upon a time. You going hunting? He asked, nodding at my supplies. Something like that. You know the old logging territory north of here? His eyes narrowed slightly. Yeah, I know it. Worked up there for 30 years before the mill closed down. Why? I'm heading up that way. What's it like now? Abandoned, mostly. The mill shut down in '98 and most folks moved away. There's a few old camps still standing, but nobody's been up there regular in 20 years. You got business up there? Family property. Checking it out. He nodded slowly, like that made sense. Well, be careful. Cell service cuts out about 40 miles up, and if you get lost up there, you're really lost. Had a hiker disappear 3 years back. Search and rescue looked for a month, never found him. Thanks for the warning. I paid for my supplies and got back in the truck. The GPS showed 187 miles to the destination, estimated drive time just over 4 hours. It was 11 a.m. now. If I left immediately, I'd be there by 3 or 4 in the afternoon, assuming the roads were passable. I started driving. The first 100 miles were easy, just point the truck north and follow the highway through familiar territory. I'd driven this route dozens of times as a kid, heading up to the mountains with Dad for camping trips or fishing expeditions or just to get away from the city for a weekend. Back then, it had just been the two of us. Mom had died when I was 8. Cancer, fast and brutal, and Dad had raised me alone. Trevor had been off at college by then, getting his fancy degree in business administration that he'd never actually used for anything productive. Those trips with Dad had been my education in what really mattered. He'd taught me to fish, to start a fire, to read the woods, to fix things with whatever materials I had on hand. He'd taught me carpentry and metalwork and plumbing and electrical. He'd taught me that a man who could work with his hands would never go hungry, never be helpless, never have to rely on anyone else. And then I'd grown up, gotten married, had Emma, and suddenly I couldn't spend every weekend in the mountains with Dad. I had responsibilities, a family to support, bills to pay, a mortgage that was slowly crushing me under its weight. Dad had seemed to understand at first, but then Trevor had come back into the picture, moving back to the city after his third failed business venture, asking Dad for money to get back on his feet. And Dad had given it to him, had kept giving it to him, bailout after bailout, enabling Trevor's complete inability to function as an adult. I'd confronted Dad about it once, about 5 years ago. We'd been in his garage, working on replacing the water heater, and I'd finally lost my temper. "Why do you keep giving him money?" I'd asked. "Trevor's 40 years old. He needs to stand on his own 2 feet. "Trevor's struggling," Dad had said, not meeting my eyes. "He needs help." "We're struggling too. Emma needed surgery last year, and we're still paying off the hospital bills. We're eating rice and beans half the week, but you never offer to help us. You don't need help. You're doing fine. We're barely keeping our heads above water, Dad. But you're right. We don't ask for help, because we're not like Trevor. We don't expect everyone else to solve our problems." Dad had looked at me then, really looked at me, and I'd seen something in his eyes I couldn't identify. "You're stronger than Trevor. You always have been. Trevor needs support. You need something else." "What? What do I need?" "You'll understand someday." That had been the moment our relationship had changed. Not broken exactly, but cracked. We'd still talked on the phone occasionally, still saw each other at holidays, but the easy closeness we'd once had was gone. And now Dad was dead, and Trevor had gotten everything, and I was driving a restored truck into the mountains, following coordinates to God knows where. The highway eventually became county roads, which became smaller roads, which eventually became dirt logging roads barely wide enough for one vehicle. The GPS showed me getting closer to the destination, but there was still no indication of what was actually there. No structures marked on the map, no roads beyond the one I was on, just wilderness. Cell service had cut out about 30 miles back, just like the gas station clerk had warned. I was completely alone now, the only human for miles in any direction, driving through dense forest that blocked out most of the afternoon sun. The road was rough, potholes and washouts and fallen branches, but the truck handled it easily, the suspension soaking up the bumps like it had been designed specifically for this terrain. Which I was starting to realize it probably had been. Dad had rebuilt this truck, had given it new tires, new suspension, a powerful rebuilt engine, had prepared it for exactly this kind of driving, had known I'd be making this trip eventually, and had made sure I'd have the tools to do it safely. The GPS showed 1 mile to the destination. The road had narrowed to little more than 2 tire tracks through the undergrowth, grass growing up between them like the path hadn't been used in months. Trees pressed in from both sides, branches scraping against the truck's paint. I drove slowly, watching for obstacles, wondering what the hell I was going to find, and then the trees opened up, and I saw it. The clearing was maybe 2 acres, surrounded by towering pines, with a cabin sitting in the center like something out of a dream. Not a small hunting cabin or a rustic shack. A real house, maybe 2,000 square feet, built from massive logs that had to be at least 2 feet thick at their smallest point. The roof was metal, painted forest green, with solar panels covering every inch of the south-facing side. A wraparound porch circled the entire structure. A stone chimney rose from the center, smoke-stained from use. Behind the main cabin, connected by a covered walkway, was a second building, almost as large. Workshop or garage, I guessed, with the same log construction and metal roof. The clearing had been carefully maintained, grass mowed, garden beds visible near the cabin, though dormant for winter, a well house with a hand pump, a root cellar entrance visible on the side of a small hill. This wasn't some weekend getaway. This was a homestead, a serious, permanent structure designed for year-round living. And it was mine. It had to be. Dad had left me the coordinates, had rebuilt the truck to get here. This was what he'd really left me, not just a rusty Ford. I parked the truck near the cabin and got out slowly, half expecting someone to emerge and tell me I was trespassing. But nothing moved except wind in the trees. The place was silent except for bird calls and the distant sound of running water, a creek or stream somewhere nearby. The front door was solid wood, hand-carved with a pattern I recognized immediately as Dad's work. I'd seen him carve similar patterns on projects when I was a kid. There was a lock, modern and sturdy. I tried the keys from the truck ring, and the third one fit perfectly. The door swung open on well-oiled hinges, revealing an interior that took my breath away. The main room was open concept, spanning the entire front section of the cabin, kitchen flowing into dining area, flowing into living space, all of it crafted with the kind of attention to detail that spoke of thousands of hours of work. Every piece of furniture was handmade, quality woodwork I recognized as Dad's style, even before I looked closer and saw his maker's mark burned into the underside of the dining table. A wood stove sat in the center of the space, the stone chimney rising through the ceiling, radiating warmth even though no fire burned. The heat meant someone had been here recently, or the cabin was so well insulated that heat lingered for days. The kitchen wasn't rustic camping equipment. Full-sized appliances, all modern, all running. The refrigerator hummed quietly, displaying a digital temperature reading. The lights worked when I flipped switches, bright LED bulbs that meant the solar panels were doing their job. Water ran when I turned on the tap, clear and cold and clean. The stove was propane, the kind that could run for months on a single tank. I walked through the cabin in a daze, opening doors, discovering spaces that felt both foreign and familiar. 3 bedrooms, all furnished with handmade bed frames and dressers. 2 bathrooms with functioning plumbing, modern toilets and sinks, and even a shower with an instant-demand water heater. A pantry stocked with canned goods and dried foods, enough to feed a family for months. A root cellar accessed through a trap door in the kitchen floor, the space below filled with preserved vegetables in mason jars, the kind of food storage that took years to build up. Someone had lived here, or prepared to live here, recently and regularly. In the master bedroom, the largest of the 3, with windows overlooking the clearing and the forest beyond, I found a desk. Solid oak, handmade, with drawers that slid smoothly on new hardware. And on top of that desk, centered perfectly like it had been placed there specifically for me to find, was an envelope with my name written on it in Dad's handwriting. My hands shook as I picked it up. The envelope was thick, multiple pages inside. I opened it carefully and pulled out several sheets of paper covered in Dad's familiar scrawl. Maurice, it began. No, dear Maurice, or to my son. Just my name, direct and honest, like Dad had always been. If you're reading this, I'm dead. And if you're reading this in this cabin, it means you found the truck, followed the GPS, and came looking for answers. Good. That's what I hoped you'd do. That's what I trained you to do. Follow the clues, dig deeper, look underneath the surface for what's really there. I'm sorry about the will. I'm sorry Trevor got the house and the money and all those things that probably made you feel like I loved him more than you. But I need you to understand something, son. Trevor got what he values. money and possessions and things that will be gone in 20 years, spent or sold or lost. You got what matters. I've been building this place for 17 years. Every weekend when I told you I was working contract jobs in the mountains, I was here, working on this cabin, building these structures, creating something permanent, something that would last, something that would give you options. This cabin is yours, completely and legally yours. The property deed is in the desk drawer, 40 acres, bought 20 years ago and held in a trust with you as the sole beneficiary. Trevor can't touch it. Sullivan doesn't even know about it. This is outside the will, outside probate, completely separate from everything Trevor inherited. But it's more than just a cabin, Maurice. It's a life, a different way of living. The cabin is completely off-grid. Solar power with battery backup, enough to run everything you need. Well water 300 feet deep, tested clean every year. Septic system that'll last 50 years. The workshop behind the cabin has every tool you could need. Wood shop, metal shop, forge for blacksmithing, welding equipment, everything. The root cellar has 5 years of preserved food. There's a garden site marked out, ready to be planted. Plans for a greenhouse in the workshop. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking this is crazy. You've got a life in the city, a job, a mortgage, responsibilities. Emma's in school, Karen's got her work. How could you possibly use this place? But Maurice, think about what that city life is costing you. You work 60 hours a week at a job you don't love, making barely enough to cover your bills. Karen works 2 jobs just to help make ends meet. You see Emma maybe 2 hours a day, and half that time you're both so exhausted you can barely function. You're drowning in medical debt from her surgery. Your mortgage is killing you. Your car's falling apart. You're living paycheck to paycheck with no savings, no safety net, no breathing room. This cabin is your safety net, your breathing room, your chance to step off the treadmill and build something real. You could live here, actually live here year-round. Work remotely if you want. The satellite internet is fast enough for video calls. Or do contract work. There's construction jobs in the small towns within 30 miles, and they pay better than what you're making in the city. You've got all the skills. Karen could work from home or take a break from working entirely. Emma could grow up with 40 acres to explore instead of a suburban backyard. She could learn to work with her hands like I taught you. Could grow up understanding what really matters. Or you could use it as a vacation place. Come up on weekends, decompress, get away from the stress. Use the workshop for side projects. Make furniture you could sell. Build a business slowly while keeping your day job. Or you could sell it. The property's worth at least $400,000, maybe more to the right buyer. That money could pay off your mortgage, your medical debt, everything. Could give you a clean slate. But Maurice, I'm hoping you'll consider the first option, actually living here, because I built this place thinking about you and Karen and Emma, thinking about giving you a life where you could breathe, where you wouldn't be crushed under the weight of bills and obligations and the constant grind of modern life. I know it seems impossible. I know it seems crazy, but you can do it. I trained you for exactly this. Everything I taught you, carpentry, plumbing, electrical work, hunting, fishing, gardening, food preservation, all of it was preparing you for this possibility, for the option to step away from the system and build something that lasts. Trevor couldn't do this. Trevor wouldn't last a week up here. He needs easy living, needs money coming in without effort, needs someone to solve his problems. That's why I gave him the money, because he needs it to survive. But you don't. You're stronger than that, more capable, more resourceful. I gave Trevor what he needed to learn hard lessons. The house has a reverse mortgage I took out 5 years ago. He'll owe the bank $200,000 within 3 years. The investment portfolio has restrictions. He can't touch the principal until he's maintained steady employment for 5 consecutive years. The cars all have loans against them. Even the Rolex is a fake. The real one is in a safe deposit box that'll go to Emma when she turns 18. I'm not being cruel to Trevor. I'm trying to teach him what he should have learned 30 years ago. That money runs out, that possessions don't make you happy, that you have to build your own life with your own hands. He needs to hit bottom, needs to figure out who he is when daddy's money isn't there to bail him out. But you've already learned those lessons, Maurice. You've already proven you can stand on your own. Now I'm giving you something different, not a lesson, a gift. The gift of options, the gift of freedom, the gift of being able to choose how you want to live instead of being forced into choices by circumstances beyond your control. There's more information in the workshop. Documents, plans, instructions for every system in the cabin, a safe in the workshop floor. Combination is Emma's birthday, with cash reserves for emergencies and the original property deed and trust documents. Take your time deciding what to do with this place. Don't feel pressured to make a choice today. Come up on weekends, explore, get to know the property, see if it fits, see if you can imagine a life here. But know this, whether you live here or visit here or sell it, this is real. This is yours. This is what I really wanted to give you. Not money that disappears, not possessions that break, but options, freedom, the ability to build the life you want instead of the life circumstances force on you. I'm proud of you, son. Proud of the man you've become. Proud of how you've handled every hardship without asking for help, without expecting anyone to solve your problems. Proud of how you're raising Emma. Proud of your marriage to Karen, who's a hell of a lot smarter and stronger than you probably give her credit for. I love you. I always have. I'm sorry I didn't say it enough when I was alive. But I'm saying it now, and I'm proving it with this place. This is my love made tangible. 17 years of weekends and vacations and every spare moment I had, all spent building you a future. Use it well. Love, Dad. P.S. There's a video on the laptop in the desk drawer. Password is the day we finished building the deck together. The date, 6 digits, no spaces. Watch it when you're ready. I had more to say than would fit in a letter. I read the letter 3 times, sitting on the edge of the bed, tears running down my face. Dad hadn't abandoned me, hadn't valued Trevor more, hadn't forgotten about me or decided I didn't matter. He'd been building me a future for 17 years. Every weekend I'd thought he was pulling away, every time I'd felt hurt that he was helping Trevor instead of me. Dad had been up here building this. I pulled open the desk drawer with shaking hands. Inside was a laptop, the kind with a rugged case designed for construction sites. I opened it and powered it on. The password prompt appeared. The date we'd finished the deck. I remembered it clearly. July 15th, 2006. I typed 071506, and the laptop unlocked. The desktop had one folder. For Maurice. Inside was a single video file dated 3 months ago. I double-clicked it. Dad appeared on screen, sitting in what looked like this very cabin, in this very room. He looked thinner than I remembered, grayer, his face more lined, but his eyes were sharp and clear. "Hey, Maurice," he said, and hearing his voice again after 2 weeks of silence broke something open inside me. "If you're watching this, you found the place. You followed the GPS. You came looking. That's good. That's what I hoped for." He paused, seemed to gather his thoughts. "Everything in that letter is true. But there's more I need to tell you. More about Trevor. More about why I did things the way I did. Trevor's not getting what he thinks he's getting. I didn't just leave him money. I left him lessons, hard ones. The kind I should have taught him 30 years ago, but didn't because I was too soft, too willing to bail him out. The house has a reverse mortgage. The investment portfolio is locked behind employment requirements he'll never meet because he's never held a job that long. The cars have loans. Everything he thinks he inherited comes with strings attached, conditions, consequences. I'm not doing this to be mean. I'm doing it because I failed him as a father. I gave him money instead of skills, possessions instead of character. I enabled his worst instincts instead of forcing him to grow up. and now he's 42 years old and functionally helpless. So I'm giving him one last chance to learn, to hit bottom, to figure out who he is when the money's gone. Maybe he'll learn, maybe he won't, but at least I'll know I tried. But you, Maurice, you already learned those lessons. You learned them the hard way, through necessity, because I wasn't there to bail you out the way I was for Trevor. And I'm sorry for that. Sorry I left you to struggle, but you came out stronger, more capable, more real. Now I want to give you what you've earned. This place represents 17 years of my life. 17 years of planning and building and preparing. I built it for you. For your family. For the life I hope you'll build here. I know the city has its pull, job security or what passes for it these days. Emma's friends, Karen's family nearby, the comfort of the familiar. But Maurice, think about what that comfort is costing you. Your health, your time with family, your peace of mind, your freedom. Here, you'd have none of that security and all of that freedom. No boss to answer to, no mortgage payment crushing you, no commute eating your life, just you and your family and 40 acres and the skills to make it work. I'm not saying it would be easy. It wouldn't. Winters are hard up here. You'd have to chop wood and maintain systems and be responsible for everything. There's no calling a repairman when something breaks. You'd have to fix it yourself. Emma's education would be on you and Karen. Medical care is 30 miles away. You'd be isolated in ways city people can't imagine. But you can handle it. I trained you for it. Every skill I taught you, every project we worked on, every camping trip where I showed you how to survive with nothing, all of it was preparing you for this. And the rewards would be real. Time with your daughter, time with your wife, time to build things that matter instead of just working to pay bills. The satisfaction of growing your own food, building your own furniture, being truly self-sufficient. I'm not telling you what to do. That's not my place anymore. I'm just giving you options. Real options. The choice between the life you have and the life you could have. Whatever you decide, know that I love you, that I'm proud of you, that this place is yours, completely and forever, to use or not use as you see fit. But also know that I'm hoping, God, I'm hoping so much that you'll use it, that you'll bring Karen and Emma up here, that you'll walk them through this cabin and show them what's possible, that you'll give Emma the childhood I wish I could have given you, one where she grows up understanding that there are other ways to live, better ways. Take care of yourself, son. Take care of your family. And if you ever need me, well, I'll be here, in these walls, in this workshop, in every board and beam and stone I laid. This place is my final project, my masterpiece, my gift to you. Use it well. The video ended. I sat in the silence of the cabin, surrounded by 17 years of my father's labor, and understood finally what he'd been trying to teach me all along. It wasn't about money. It was never about money. It was about freedom, options, the ability to choose your own path instead of having it chosen for you by circumstances and debt and the invisible pressures of modern life. Dad had given Trevor money and possessions because Trevor needed to learn they didn't matter. He'd given me skills and knowledge and this cabin because I was ready to understand what really did matter. I pulled out my phone, 1 bar of signal, probably from a cell tower on a distant mountain. Just enough to make a call. I dialed Karen. Maurice, thank God. Where have you been? I've been trying to call for hours. I'm at the cabin. Karen, you need to see this. You need to see what Dad built. What do you mean? What cabin? I told her everything. About the GPS coordinates, the drive into the mountains, the cabin that was actually a house, the letter from Dad, the video. About the 40 acres and the workshop and the solar panels and the well and everything else. About Dad's plan, his hopes, his gift. She was silent for a long time after I finished. Then, Maurice, are you seriously suggesting we move to the mountains? Leave our life? Leave everything? I'm not suggesting anything yet. I'm asking you to come see it. This weekend. Bring Emma. See what Dad built. Then we'll talk about what it means. We can't just uproot our lives on a whim. You have a job, I have my work. Emma has school and friends and we're drowning, Karen. We both know it. We're working ourselves to the end just to stay afloat. When's the last time we had a conversation that wasn't about money or bills or which credit card to use? When's the last time you weren't exhausted? When's the last time we actually enjoyed being parents instead of just surviving parenthood? Silence again. Then, quietly, that's not fair. It's completely fair. It's the truth. We're not living, Karen. We're existing. We're stuck on a treadmill that's slowly grinding us down to nothing. And Dad saw that. He knew. He built us an escape route. An escape route that's in the middle of nowhere. That's off the grid. That would mean starting over completely. Yes, it would. And maybe that's exactly what we need. I can't talk about this right now. I'm at work. We'll discuss it this weekend when I can see this place. Okay, this weekend. I'll drive back tomorrow and we'll come up together on Saturday. Fine. Just be safe, okay? Don't do anything stupid. I won't. I love you. Love you too. I hung up and walked outside. The sun was getting lower, late afternoon sliding toward evening. I explored the property on foot, finding things I'd missed from the truck. The creek Dad had mentioned in his letter, running clear and cold about 50 yards from the cabin. A cleared area marked with stakes that must be the garden site. A stone fire pit near the creek. Trails leading into the forest, well maintained and clearly marked. And the workshop. I'd saved it for last, but now I walked across the covered walkway, connecting it to the main cabin, and opened the door. The space was massive, 30 by 40 feet at least, with high ceilings and windows along one wall for natural light. One end was a complete woodworking shop, table saw, band saw, jointer, planer, lathe, drill press, every tool a carpenter could want. The other end was metalworking, a forge with anvil, a welding station with both MIG and TIG welders, a metal lathe, grinders and sanders and cutting torches. Tool chests lined the walls, each one organized and labeled. This wasn't a hobby shop. This was a professional workshop, equipped to handle any project, capable of producing anything from furniture to metalwork to repair any system on the property. In the corner near the forge was a trap door in the floor, exactly like the one Dad had mentioned. I pulled it open and found a metal safe underneath, the kind designed to survive fire and flood. The combination lock waited for input. Emma's birthday, January 8th, 2018. I tried 10818. The safe clicked open. Inside was exactly what Dad had promised. Cash in a sealed plastic bag. I counted it quickly. $20,000 in hundreds. A folder containing property deeds and trust documents, all showing that this cabin and the 40 surrounding acres had been purchased 20 years ago for $45,000 and held in an irrevocable trust with me as the sole beneficiary. Another folder with detailed instructions and diagrams for every system in the cabin: solar power, well water, septic, propane, everything. Blueprints for future projects, a greenhouse, a barn, a second cabin, even a small hydroelectric generator that could be installed on the creek. And at the bottom of the safe, wrapped in cloth, was a Rolex Submariner. The real one. Dad's actual watch, the one he'd worn every day for 30 years. The one Trevor thought he'd inherited but was actually a fake. A note was tied to the watch with string. For Emma, on her 18th birthday. Or for you, if you need to sell it. Whatever matters more. Dad. I held that watch and realized Dad had thought of everything. Every contingency, every possibility. He'd built this place as a gift, but he'd also built it as insurance, as a safety net, as proof that someone had been watching out for me even when I thought I was alone. I spent the night in the cabin, sleeping in the master bedroom under blankets Dad had probably bought and washed and folded. Woke to silence so complete it was almost frightening for someone used to city noise. Made coffee on the propane stove. The canister was full, and I found 3 more in the workshop marked backup. Everything worked. Everything was maintained. Dad had been coming here regularly, keeping it ready, waiting for this moment. I explored more of the property in the morning, found fruit trees planted in a clearing, apple, pear, cherry, all young but established. Found a chicken coop already built, empty but ready for birds. Found the creek had been partially dammed to create a pool deep enough for swimming in summer. Dad had thought of everything. Had planned for a family to live here, to thrive here, to build a life here. I drove back to the city that afternoon, the truck handling the rough roads as easily as it had on the way up. My mind spun with possibilities and impossibilities, with dreams and fears, with the weight of the choice Dad had given me. Trevor called halfway home. "Where the hell have you been? I've been trying to reach you. Out of cell range, what do you want? I want to know if you're planning to contest the will. Sullivan said you have 30 days to file. Why would I contest it? You got what you wanted. Don't play games. I know you're pissed. I know you think you deserved more. But Dad made his choice. He knew what he was doing." "Yeah," I said. He did. He knew exactly what he was doing. "So, you're not going to contest?" "No, Trevor, I'm not going to contest. You got the house, you got the money, you got everything you value. I got what I needed. A rusty truck? Real generous of him. More generous than you'll ever understand." I hung up before he could respond. Let him sit with that. Let him wonder what I meant. He'd figure it out eventually when the reverse mortgage came due and the investment portfolio stayed locked and the cars got repossessed. He'd figure out that Dad's generosity had come with strings attached, lessons embedded in every inheritance. But by then, maybe Trevor would have learned something, or maybe he wouldn't. Either way, it wasn't my problem anymore. Karen was skeptical from the moment I pulled up in the truck Saturday morning. She stood on our porch with Emma beside her, looking at the old Ford like it might explode, and I could see the doubt written across her face before I even got out. "That's what your dad left you?" Emma asked, running down the steps to peer into the truck bed. "It's really old, Daddy." "It is old, sweetheart, but it runs great. Want to go for a ride?" "Where?" "To see Grandpa's cabin, the one I told you about." Emma looked at Karen, who nodded reluctantly. We'd talked last night on the phone for 2 hours, going over every detail of what I'd found. Karen had listened without interrupting, but I could hear the resistance in her silences. "This was crazy," she'd said finally. "This was a complete upheaval of our lives based on what? A letter and a cabin in the woods? What about stability? What about Emma's education? What about their careers and friends and the life they'd built? I hadn't had good answers then, wasn't sure I had them now, but I had to show them the cabin, had to let them see what Dad had built, what he'd envisioned for us. The drive took 5 hours with stops for Emma, bathroom breaks and snacks and questions about everything we passed. She sat in the back seat, staring out the window as the city gave way to suburbs, gave way to forests. Her 6-year-old mind processing this adventure with the seriousness she gave everything. Karen sat beside me, quiet for most of the drive. She looked at the GPS coordinates, at the route taking us deeper into territory she'd never seen. "This is really remote," she said when we turned onto the first logging road. "Yeah, it is. What if Emma gets sick? What if one of us gets hurt? We'd be an hour from the nearest hospital. There's a satellite phone in the cabin. Emergency services can get here. It might take longer, but they can get here." Might take longer. That's great. Really reassuring. Karen. "No, Maurice. I'm trying to be open-minded about this, but you have to understand how insane this sounds. You want us to move to a cabin in the middle of nowhere based on your dead father's letter. Leave our jobs, pull Emma out of school, start over completely. Do you hear how that sounds?" "I hear it. And you're right. It sounds insane. But just look at the place before you decide. Just see what Dad built." She didn't answer, just stared out the window at the trees closing in around us. Emma, at least, was excited. "Is this where Grandpa lived?" she asked as we got deeper into the forest. Sometimes, I said. He came here on weekends to work on the cabin. Why didn't he tell us about it? Because it was a surprise. He wanted to finish it first. Like a present? Yeah, baby, like a present. The cabin appeared through the trees exactly as I remembered it. Karen's breath caught when she saw it. Maurice, this isn't a cabin. This is a house. I know. You said your dad built this? Every board, every stone, every inch of it. We parked and got out. Emma immediately ran toward the creek, attracted by the sound of running water. Karen walked slowly around the clearing, taking it all in, the solar panels, the garden beds, the workshop, the careful maintenance of everything. I unlocked the cabin and let them inside. Emma ran from room to room, claiming the bedroom with the creek view as hers immediately. Karen moved more slowly, touching the handmade furniture, testing the faucets, opening the pantry and staring at the shelves of preserved food. He really built all this? She asked quietly. 17 years, every weekend, every vacation. This is what he was doing when I thought he was pulling away. Karen sat down at the dining table, running her hand over the smooth wood. This is your father's work. I can see it, the attention to detail, the craftsmanship. He wanted us to have options, wanted Emma to grow up with space and freedom and skills. And what about money? How would we live? You can't just homestead anymore, Maurice. We'd still need income. I showed her dad's letter, the parts about construction work in nearby towns, about remote work possibilities, about the cash reserves in the workshop safe. Showed her the laptop with satellite internet, the systems that worked, the thought Dad had put into every aspect of making this place livable. There are construction crews within 30 miles, I said. Small towns that need carpenters and builders. I could work 3 days a week and make what I make now working 60 hours. You could freelance online. Your graphic design work doesn't require you to be in the city. Emma could do online school, or we could homeschool her, or both. And what about friends? What about socialization? What about all the things kids need? There are families in those small towns. Kids her age. We wouldn't be completely isolated. But we'd be isolated enough. Karen stood and walked to the window. Emma was outside throwing rocks in the creek, laughing at the splashes. She seems happy here. She is happy. When's the last time you saw her that relaxed, that free? That's not fair. We give her a good life. We give her what we can afford, which isn't much. Dance classes we can barely pay for. Birthday parties where we stress about the cost. A house with a backyard the size of a postage stamp. And we're both so exhausted from working that we barely have energy to play with her. Karen was quiet for a long moment. Then, you really want to do this? You really want to move here? I want us to consider it. Really consider it. Not just dismiss it as crazy. Dad gave us an option most people never get. A way out of the rat race. A chance to live differently. Don't we owe it to ourselves to at least think about it seriously? What about Trevor? What did he say when you told him about this place? I didn't tell him. What? Why not? Because Dad left this to me, outside the will, in a trust Trevor can't touch. Dad didn't want him to know about it. Karen turned to look at me. That seems cruel. Dad left Trevor what Trevor values, money and possessions. He left me what I need. This isn't about being cruel. It's about teaching different lessons to different people. And what lesson are we supposed to learn from all this? That there are other ways to live. That freedom matters more than security. That spending time with the people you love is worth more than any paycheck. That's easy to say when we're standing in a beautiful cabin on a Saturday afternoon. It's harder when it's January and the temperature's below zero and the well pump freezes and we're miles from help. You're right, it would be hard, but we're already living hard. We're just living a different kind of hard, the kind where we work ourselves to the end for money that disappears into bills and debt, and we never get ahead, and we never breathe, and we never have time for anything that matters. Emma came running back in. "Mommy, there's a frog! Come see!" Karen let Emma pull her outside. I watched them from the window, Karen kneeling by the creek, while Emma showed her the frog she'd found, both of them laughing. When was the last time I'd seen Karen laugh like that? Really laugh, not the tired chuckle she managed after a long day of work? We spent the night in the cabin, made dinner on the propane stove, pasta with sauce from the pantry, lit a fire in the wood stove, and Emma sat mesmerized watching the flames. Put her to bed in the room she'd claimed, reading her a story by lamplight because she thought that was more fun than the electric lights. Karen and I sat on the porch after Emma was asleep, watching stars appear in numbers we never saw in the city. The silence was profound, broken only by wind in the trees and the creek and distant animal sounds. "I can see why your dad loved it here," Karen said quietly. "Yeah, it's beautiful, peaceful, everything you said it was. But I'm scared, Maurice. I'm scared of leaving everything we know. I'm scared of failing. I'm scared of making the wrong choice." "So am I, but I'm also scared of not trying. Scared of looking back in 20 years and wondering what would have happened if we'd been brave enough to take the chance. What if it doesn't work? What if we move here and hate it? What if Emma struggles? What if we can't make enough money? Then we move back. We sell this place, use the money to start over, but at least we tried. At least we gave ourselves the option." Karen leaned against me. "Your dad really thought this through, didn't he?" "Every detail. He spent 17 years planning this, making sure it would work, making sure we'd have everything we needed." "Why do you think he did it? Why go to all this trouble?" "Because he loved us, and because he knew we were drowning and couldn't figure out how to save ourselves, so he built us a lifeboat." We sat in silence for a while. Then Karen said, "I need to think about it. Really think about it, not decide tonight." "That's fair. That's all I'm asking." But I could see it in her eyes. She was already imagining it, already seeing the possibility, already wondering if maybe, just maybe, this crazy idea could work. We drove back to the city Sunday afternoon. Emma cried when we left, saying she wanted to stay at the cabin, wanted to see more frogs and explore the forest and sleep in her special room. Karen was quiet again, but it was a different kind of quiet, thoughtful instead of resistant. Monday morning, I went back to work at the construction site. My boss asked where I'd been Friday. I'd called in sick, which wasn't exactly a lie. I'd been sick with grief and confusion and the weight of decisions I didn't know how to make. But being back on the site, doing the same work I'd done for 5 years, felt different now. Every hammer stroke felt temporary. Every board I nailed felt like I was building someone else's dream instead of my own. By lunch, I was thinking about the workshop at the cabin, about the projects I could build there, about working for myself instead of for someone else. Trevor called Tuesday. "We need to talk. Can you come by the house?" "About what?" "Just come by. It's important." I drove over after work. The house, Dad's house, Trevor's house now, looked the same from the outside, but Trevor was waiting on the porch, and he looked different, stressed, worried. The smug confidence from the will reading was gone. "What's up?" I asked. "I met with Sullivan yesterday, had him go through all the paperwork for the estate in detail. Maurice, there are problems." "What kind of problems?" "The house has a reverse mortgage. Did you know about that?" "I heard something about it. $200,000 due in 3 years. I can't afford that. I don't have that kind of money." "Sell the house." "And go where? The real estate market's terrible right now. I'd barely break even after paying off the mortgage." "That's not my problem, Trevor." "And the investment portfolio. It's locked. I can't touch any of the principal until I've maintained employment for 5 consecutive years. 5 years! I've never held a job that long in my life." "Sounds like Dad wanted you to learn something." Trevor's face went red. Learn something? He screwed me over. He gave me all this stuff but made it worthless. Why would he do that? Because you needed to learn that money isn't free, that you have to work for things, that possessions don't make you happy. Dad gave you exactly what you needed, a crash course in reality. And what did he give you? That piece of shit truck? He gave me what I needed too. Which was what? Options. Options. What the hell does that mean? It means I'm not drowning in debt I can't pay. It means I'm not scrambling to figure out how to keep a house I can't afford. It means I'm not learning at 42 years old that money runs out if you don't earn it. Trevor stared at me. You knew. You knew about the conditions on everything. I figured it out. And you didn't warn me? Would you have listened? He didn't answer. Just stood there on the porch of a house he couldn't afford to keep, surrounded by possessions that were really just anchors dragging him down. I need a loan, he said finally, to cover expenses until I can sort this out. No. What? Come on, Maurice, we're brothers. Family helps family. Family helps family learn. Dad tried to help you for 40 years by giving you money. How'd that work out? You never learned, never grew up, never figured out how to stand on your own. I'm not going to make the same mistake. So you're just going to let me lose everything? You're not losing everything. You're losing things, possessions, money, stuff that doesn't matter. Maybe once it's gone, you'll figure out what does matter. Screw you, Maurice. Dad loved you, Trevor. He loved you enough to let you fail. That's what this is, his final attempt to teach you something important. Don't waste it. I left him there and drove home. Karen was making dinner. Emma was doing homework at the kitchen table. Our tiny house with its leaky roof and outdated appliances and mortgage that was slowly crushing us. But it was home. It was safe. It was familiar. How was your day? Karen asked. Trevor's figured out that Dad's inheritance came with strings attached. He's panicking. Is he okay? He will be, eventually, once he learns what Dad was trying to teach him. Emma looked up from her homework. Daddy, when can we go back to the cabin? Soon, baby. Soon. Karen met my eyes over Emma's head. We'd been married 10 years. I could read her expressions like a book. And what I saw now was decision. She'd made up her mind. We need to talk, she said, after Emma went to bed. About the cabin, about moving, about all of it. Okay. I've been thinking about it nonstop since Saturday, running numbers, making lists of pros and cons, trying to figure out if it could actually work. And I think we should do it. I stared at her. Really? Really? Not right away, we'd need to plan it out, give proper notice at our jobs, sell this house, get Emma transitioned. But yes, I think we should move to the cabin. What changed your mind? Watching Emma there. Watching you there. Hell, watching myself there. I haven't felt that relaxed in years, Maurice. Haven't felt that free. And I realized, your dad was right. We are drowning. We're working ourselves to the end for what? A house we can barely afford? Careers that don't fulfill us? A life where we're too exhausted to enjoy our own daughter? It won't be easy. Nothing worth doing is easy. But at least it would be ours. Our choice. Our life. Not one dictated by bills and debt and keeping up with expectations we never asked for. We spent the next 3 months planning. Karen gave notice at her job and started transitioning her graphic design work to freelance. I lined up construction contacts in the towns near the cabin, guys who needed carpenters and were willing to pay cash. We listed our house and sold it faster than expected. Turned out there was a market for starter homes, even ones that needed work. Used the proceeds to pay off our medical debt and car loans. Put the rest in savings. Started buying supplies for the cabin, tools we'd need, clothes for mountain winters, homeschool curriculum for Emma. Trevor called once more, 2 months after our porch conversation. I got a job, he said. No greeting, just the announcement. That's good. Doing what? Sales, car dealership. It's not much, but it's something. That's a start. I'm selling the house, can't make the mortgage payment, moving into an apartment. That's probably smart. I'm selling the cars too, the Mustang, the Mercedes, all of it. Can't afford the insurance and maintenance. Good. You were right. About Dad, about what he was trying to teach me. I hated you for it, but you were right. I'm glad you figured it out. I don't know if I can do this. 5 years of employment, that's forever. One day at a time, Trevor. That's all any of us can do. He hung up. I didn't know if he'd make it. Didn't know if he'd keep the job, maintain the discipline, learn the lessons Dad had tried to teach. But it wasn't my responsibility. Trevor was a grown man. His choices were his own. We moved in September, rented a truck, packed up our lives, and drove north one final time as city people. Emma was excited, treating it like a grand adventure. Karen was nervous but determined. I was somewhere between terrified and exhilarated. The cabin welcomed us like it had been waiting. And maybe it had been. 17 years of waiting. 17 years of Dad building and planning and hoping that someday we'd be ready for this. We spent the first weeks just settling in, learning the systems, figuring out the solar panels and the well pump and the wood stove. Emma adapted almost immediately, running wild through 40 acres, collecting rocks and leaves and stories about her adventures. Karen set up her home office in the 3rd bedroom and discovered she liked freelancing better than her old job. More control, better hours, and she was making almost as much money with half the stress. I started taking construction jobs in the nearby towns. Word spread that I was good, reliable, skilled. By October, I had more work than I could handle, and I was making more per hour than I had in the city. Better yet, I was working maybe 30 hours a week instead of 60, and the rest of my time was mine. We planted a garden that first spring, built the greenhouse from Dad's blueprints, got chickens, added goats for milk. Slowly, methodically, we built a life that was ours in a way nothing in the city had ever been. Emma thrived. We homeschooled her using online resources and hands-on projects. She learned math by measuring lumber and calculating board feet. Learned biology by studying the ecosystem around us. Learned history by reading books by the wood stove. She was happier, healthier, more engaged with life than she'd ever been in traditional school. And Karen and I, we remembered what it was like to actually be married instead of just being partners in survival. We had time for conversations, time for each other, time to actually be parents instead of just managing logistics. Trevor visited once, about a year after we'd moved. He drove up in an old sedan, looking tired but somehow more real than he'd ever looked. He'd kept the job at the dealership, was actually doing well, had an apartment he could afford, a budget he stuck to, a life he'd built with his own hands. "This is really something," he said, looking around the property. "Dad built all this?" "Every board." "And he left it to you?" "Yeah. I was so angry when I found out. Thought he'd screwed me over on purpose." "He did. On purpose. Because he loved you." Trevor nodded slowly. "I get that now. I didn't then. But I do now. He gave me what I needed even though it wasn't what I wanted. That's what good parents do. I'm sorry. For being such an asshole. For thinking I deserved everything. For not appreciating what I had until it was gone. Water under the bridge. Think Dad would be proud of me? Of what I'm doing now? Yeah, I think he would." Trevor stayed for dinner. Met Emma, who'd never really known her uncle. Saw the life we'd built. Before he left, he pulled me aside. "I'm going to make it, Maurice. The 5 years, the employment requirement. I'm going to earn that investment portfolio. I believe you. And when I do, I'm going to use it to start my own business, something real, something I build myself. Dad would like that." "Yeah, I think he would." We stood there on the porch, 2 brothers who'd taken different paths to learn the same lesson. That possessions don't matter, that money comes and goes, that what matters is what you build with your hands and your heart and your life. "You know what's funny?" Trevor said. I got the house and the money and the cars. But you got the better inheritance. Yeah, I did. Think Dad knew that all along? I know he did. That was the whole point. Trevor drove away, his taillights disappearing down the logging road. I watched him go, then turned back to the cabin where my family waited. The lights were warm in the windows. I could hear Karen and Emma laughing about something inside. This was what Dad had given me. Not money, not possessions, but freedom, options, the ability to choose how I wanted to live instead of having it chosen for me by debt and circumstance and the endless grind of modern life. I walked inside, to the cabin Dad built, to the life he made possible, to the future he'd given us. And I said a silent thank you to the man who'd loved me enough to give me more than money. He'd given me a life worth living.